is my first YouTube video ever. I thought I'd start off by doing a Q&A just so that you guys could get to know me. My name is Chanel. I am 24 and I live in Ohio. I am married to Daniel and I have a 4-month-old daughter named Isla. I recently reached out to Facebook and Instagram and just asked some common questions to see what you guys were curious to know about my life. Here are a couple of the questions that I got in from you guys. One of the first questions was, I'd love to know your easiest and hardest parts about pregnancy and labor. So the easiest part about pregnancy was probably just being able to eat whatever I wanted to eat. I didn't really have a strict diet. I wasn't really too concerned about how much weight I was gaining. As long as my doctor told me that I was okay, I just kept eating how I was eating. The hardest parts about pregnancy was probably towards the end because I was working full-time. I was standing on my feet a lot as a hairdresser, so it was very complicated for me to continue working. Towards the end of my pregnancy, they were watching me for preeclampsia, so I had a lot of swelling. I got very tired easily, so behind the chair I was standing about 10 hours or so on a long day. So it was very hard to continue working. Another part of the question is advice for people wanting to get pregnant in the future. Dan and I weren't trying to conceive necessarily. I ended up finding out that I was pregnant 2 weeks before our wedding. It was just a surprise in that sense, a very happy surprise. So my best advice would just be to use a period tracker or something that you can track your ovulation. Just keep a lookout for like when in your cycle you're ovulating, and then I would just say try then. I always hear that the best advice is you usually get pregnant when you're not trying. When you're trying, it tends to somehow be more complicated. What are you happy you did or wish you had done differently during your pregnancy and labor? I definitely wish that I would have stopped working sooner than I did. I was very worried about disappointing my clients, and I didn't want anybody to be upset with me for having to take off work, even though I know that towards the end of the pregnancy a lot of people can be very understanding, but it is hard to explain because there are some people that would say to me, oh, well, I worked up until the end of my pregnancy, or I worked up until my due date, and for me that just wasn't the case. And I think that I was just holding myself to that standard of, wow, I really need to work as long as all these other people did. So I ended up taking off, I think I took off like the week before I had Isla, so I worked up until 37 weeks, and then that whole week I took off, I ended up having her at 38 weeks in 1 day. When it comes to labor, I made the decision to only have my husband in the room with me when it came to active labor. I started having contractions at 4 in the morning, and when I called my on-call doctor, they didn't believe that I was in labor. They kind of just thought that, oh, this is false labor. Not many first-time moms go into labor this soon. So I waited 2 hours or so, waited until my contractions got a lot closer, and then we hopped in the car, drove to the hospital, and I just threw everything in the car that I had already had packed, and I didn't think to eat or to really do much because my main concern was just getting to the hospital. I think that just when you're in the spur of the moment and everything's happening, you just don't think and you just go. I wish that I would have eaten before I left, because I went from 4 a.m. or whatever time I ate the night before to the following day. Around 2 a.m. is when I had her, and I didn't eat until 7 o'clock the next day in the morning because they don't really allow you to eat anything. I just had water, and they offered me popsicles here and then, but it wasn't really something that I wanted. So I would definitely recommend to eat if you have enough time. By the time that I got to the hospital, my mother and father-in-law were in the room with me. My husband and my mom were there, and they were just in there while we were waiting for everything to progress. I arrived at 7 a.m. and they broke my water around 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So right as soon as they broke my water, I told them that it was okay for them to come to the hospital, and they just kind of sat around and waited for things to progress. Every time that I had a check to see how far dilated I was, they decided to leave the room as per my request. But as I said before, by the time that it came to pushing, it was just me and my husband, and I didn't have any visitors at the hospital other than my cousin who offered to take pictures of Isla, and my husband's grandmother was there, and that was it. And I think that that was probably the best decision that I could have made, because it allowed me to get a lot of rest, and I was able to bond a lot with Isla and my husband. How did you choose Isla's name? We had a very hard time trying to pick Isla's name. My husband is very picky when it comes to baby names, and we had already had a name set for a boy, and I was dead set on the fact that I was having a boy. I did not think that I was having a girl. I don't like very common names. With my name being Chanel, I never met anybody with the same name as me, so I kind of wanted the same thing for my daughter. Even though I know that there are other Chanels or other Islas out there, it's not very commonly heard in the area that we live in. So I was just scrolling through Pinterest, looking at bohemian or rock names, or just things that are totally out of the blue. I saw the name Isla, and I was like, how in the hell do you pronounce this name? I got on YouTube and I looked up the proper pronunciation, and it said Isla, and I was like, wow, that's really pretty. When I ran it by Dan, he was like, no, I don't like it. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I love this name, and I just kept saying it over and over and over again just to get him used to the name. So when it comes to her middle name, because her name is Isla Scout, he ended up deciding on, because it was from To Kill a Mockingbird. We said that in the future we would call her Scout as a nickname. She wants to be called by her middle name as a nickname or whatever it may be, but I never really had a nickname growing up, because it's very hard to take my name and turn it into a nickname, or at least nothing that stuck. So yeah, that's how we chose her name. Just finding the name and putting some things together and seeing what rolled off the tongue. We do have a very interesting last name, so it's hard to pair something that doesn't sound like a mouthful. Next question is, how did you and your husband meet? So I have a very close family friend named Nick, and we were supposed to go out for some wings at a local restaurant, and it was just supposed to be me and him, just, you know, to go out to eat one day and catch up, whatever. And it turned out to be him and 3 or 4 of his other friends, one of them being Daniel. You know, they didn't even know that I was going to be there. And Dan and I just chit-chatted a little bit, and he was the only person that had ever gotten me tongue-tied. I remember at that time I was working for my mom as a receptionist, because my mother's a hairdresser as well. And I told him that I was a hairdresser. At that point I was not. And I had to correct myself because I was just so flustered. I was like, oh, here's this older guy and he's so cute. And he ended up going home that night, and I ended up telling Nick that I thought that he was really cute. Nick ended up seeing him later on in the evening, and Dan told him that he felt the same way, and Dan said that he wanted to start talking, and we started chit-chatting, and we went on a couple dates, and then a month and a half to 2 months later we officially started dating. That was 2014. So we've been together 4 years this year, and in August it'll be our 1-year wedding anniversary. Are you wanting more babies? So my husband is ready for a baby now, because he would like to get the other one out of the way while they're still young, and we do want them to be very close in age. But as many of you girls know who've gone through pregnancy, your body takes a lot of time to recover. During my pregnancy I gained 56 pounds. I would like to get to a lower weight before we start trying for another. Me and my brother are 4.5 years apart, and Dan and his siblings are a good amount apart, maybe 10 years or so apart, so it's a very big age gap. And between me and my brother, I felt like that was very large as well, because we were never in school at the same time. I would really like to try next year, next summer or fall. That way, by the time that baby will be born, if we do conceive when we would like to, Isla will be around 2 or 2.5, and around that time we'd like to try to get her potty trained. That way we have just 1 in diapers. I would like to have 3 children in total. My husband only wants 2, but we'll see what happens when we get to that point after we have the next one. What was your reaction when you found out you were pregnant? Were you trying? I was completely shocked. I was on Depo-Provera when I was younger, and I got off of it when I was 18. And because of all the complications that I had with it, I really never thought that I was going to be able to get pregnant. I don't know if any of you have been on Depo, but it does tend to mess up your periods once you get off of it, or when you were on it in general. And I struggled a lot with getting a regular cycle. So when your cycles are irregular, it tends to be harder to conceive because you're not sure when you're ovulating. So I actually found out that I was pregnant 2 weeks before our wedding, and this was 1 week after my bachelorette party. I was like, you know, I'm feeling a whole bunch of symptoms, and this isn't the first time that I have taken a pregnancy test. Anytime I've taken a pregnancy test in the past, they were always negative, so I just assumed that it would be negative. But anyways, I had symptoms, had tender breasts, and I had missed my period, but it hadn't been very many days. It was maybe like 3 or 4 days that I missed it, so that was very normal for me. I was like, you know what, let's just go run and go grab some tests, and we'll take it, and it'll be negative, and whatever. So we go to the grocery store and I get some pregnancy tests. We get home, and most of the time they say to take a pregnancy test in the morning because that's when I guess the levels are strongest to say if you're pregnant or not. I ended up taking it as soon as I got home because I just needed to know if I was or not, and I took it in the bathroom, and while I'm in the bathroom, Daniel is in the living room and he's watching TV, and whatever he's watching, I want to say it was like David Dobrik or something, and the TV is like blaring, and I'm in the bathroom, and I like put the test down, and I walk away for a couple minutes, and then I go back in and I read the test, and it's positive. And I was like, holy crap. I screamed Dan's name like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. He's like, what? And he's like, it's positive? And I was like, yes. I think I immediately called my cousin. I'm pretty sure I'm pregnant. The lines were very dark. There wasn't any faintness, if that's a word. I think I ended up taking another one, and that one was positive as well. The following day I called my doctor. I made an appointment to confirm the pregnancy, and I wanted to wait a little bit because when I found out I was pregnant, I was only 5 weeks pregnant. With everything going on with the wedding, I was like, I don't want to go in immediately, and they really wouldn't be able to do much of an ultrasound, and there wouldn't be much to see with the ultrasound other than that I was pregnant. I was trying to think about how I was going to tell my mom and everybody because at that time I was working with my mom. I was like, wow, I'm going to be interacting with so much family and friends, and it's going to be such a big secret to keep. I ended up getting my appointment, I think the week after the wedding, and I was like, this is too big of a secret to keep for 3 weeks and have to see all of these people and keep it from them. So the following day I ended up calling my mom and telling her that I was pregnant, and we told Dan's parents and a couple other very close people to us. I was very, very excited because this was my mother's first grandbaby and my mother-in-law's first grandbaby from her son. The other part of that question was, were you trying? And we were not trying. She was definitely a surprise. But at that time, even though we weren't married yet, even prior to marriage and after engagement, we always said if I got pregnant, I got pregnant. And it was never going to be a, oh no, I don't want this, or we would just take it as it came. So we were very excited to be pregnant. There's a third part to that question. It says, did you want a boy or girl? I grew up as the older sister, so I always wanted an older brother, and that's why I wanted to have a boy first. So I, for some reason, was just so positive that I was going to have a boy. We ended up having a gender reveal, and the way that we did that was we got confetti cannons. Neither my husband or I knew the gender, but my mom and mother-in-law knew the gender, so they were the ones that bought everything and set it all up. One of our friends and our photographer that did our wedding, she photographed our gender reveal. It was just me and Dan and her, so it was very private. Before we went to shoot off the cannons, I was so nervous, and I remember shooting it off and pink flying out, and my face in the photo, which if I can, I'll insert here, you can just completely tell that I was shocked. And his face, he was like, I told you, because he always knew that as soon as we conceived that it would be a girl. He's like, I know it's going to be a girl. So the fact that he was right, it just blew my mind because I was so certain that we were going to be pregnant with a boy. But I did want to have a boy first, but now that I have Isla and one of my very good friends has a son and I see her with him, I'm just like, I don't know if I know what to do with a boy. I definitely hope with the next one that it will be a boy. I would definitely like to have a boy and a girl, but we'll see how that goes. Those are pretty much the main questions that I wanted to answer, just to talk about pregnancy and labor and my life a little bit, just to give you a little bit of an insight. I am so happy to be starting a YouTube channel, and I really hope to continue making videos. If you have any questions for me, you can leave them down below, or you can follow my Instagram at mommamandfam. And you can send me questions there, or I'm on Ask FM as well if you'd like to ask questions anonymously. the same username under Mama M and Fam as well. Leave down in the comments as well what you guys would like to see more of. If you'd like to see a day in the life with me and Isla, or if you'd like to see me answer more questions of yours. But I can't wait to see you guys soon. All right.